The big meeting room was full of noise. Different alien voices mixed together as they talked about trade and money problems. The room looked like a rainbow of strange creatures. Some aliens had hard, shiny skin like diamonds. Others were huge and walked on 6 legs that made the floor shake. Jake Martinez sat alone in the corner. He was the only human in the room. He had brown hair and looked very normal. Next to all the big, scary aliens, Jake looked small and weak. Most of the aliens did not even look at him. To them, humans were new and not important. Other alien races had been flying in space for thousands of years, while humans had only learned to fly to other planets a few hundred years ago. Commander Veltar was the biggest and scariest alien in the room. He was from a race called the Kethmer. He was almost 9 feet tall and had 4 arms. Each arm ended in sharp claws that could cut through metal. His people came from a world where only the strongest survived. When he talked, everyone listened, because they were afraid. "The humans are taking rocks from space that belong to us," Commander Veltar said in a loud, angry voice. His words made the smaller aliens move back in their chairs. "Those space rocks are in our area. We won them by fighting for them. The humans must stop taking them right now." Jake stood up slowly. His gray clothes made him look even more ordinary next to all the colorful aliens around him. "Sir, those space rocks were empty when our people got there. We have papers that say we can mine them. The Galactic Trade Office gave us permission." Some of the Kethmer aliens made sounds like laughing. Commander Veltar looked at Jake like he was looking at a bug. "Papers? You talk about papers to warriors who have been taking what we want for 10,000 years. Your people do not know how to fight real wars. You are soft and weak. You hide behind your little spaceships and your rules." A crystal alien with a voice like music spoke up. Maybe the humans could move to a different area, one where they would not have problems with stronger neighbors. Jake kept his hands behind his back and stayed calm. "We do not want to fight anyone, Commander. Our people who live there are families with children. They are scientists and workers. They just want to make a better life." "Exactly," Commander Veltar said, leaning forward with a mean smile. "Soft, weak, your people do not have what it takes to survive in this galaxy. We have studied your history, human. Even your wars are pathetic. You fight with rules. You show mercy. You worry about innocent people. Such weakness makes us sick." Other aliens nodded and agreed. Humans were known for their strange ideas about fighting fair and following rules. They had peacekeeping armies instead of conquest armies. They built hospitals on planets they conquered instead of slave camps. Most aliens in the galaxy thought this was very strange. Jake nodded like he was thinking. "You are right, Commander. We do try not to kill people unless we have to. We like to solve problems by talking. And that," Commander Veltar said with finality, "is why your people will always be prey, never hunters. We will take what we want from those space rocks. Your people have 1 week to leave, or we will force them out." The meeting ended like all the boring political meetings did, but Jake noticed how the other aliens looked at him. Most felt sorry for him. Some looked down on him. The human was outnumbered and outgunned. He represented a race that everyone thought was too soft for. The hard realities of space politics. As Jake packed his case, a 6-legged alien named Secretary Throck came over to him. His people usually tried to be kind to others. "I am sorry, Human Martinez. Maybe your people could ask the Altarian Federation to protect them. They sometimes help refugee species." Jake smiled politely. "Thank you for the idea, Secretary. But I think we will be okay. Against the Kethmer army? Friend Martinez, I mean no disrespect, but your people have never fought a real predator race. The Kethmer have conquered 47 star systems. Their warriors are born to kill." "I understand," Jake replied calmly. But you might be surprised what humans can do when we have to. Secretary Throke's 6 eyes blinked in confusion. What do you mean? Jake closed his case and walked toward the door. Commander Veltar was right about one thing. We do prefer not to kill people unless we have to. But he made one mistake when he judged us. What mistake? Jake stopped at the doorway. His face still looked mild and ordinary. He thought that because we do not like killing, we are not good at it. The words hung in the air as Jake left the room. Secretary Throck stood there, confused by what the human had said. Around the galaxy, other species saw humans as weak farmers and scientists. They saw people who cared too much about rules and mercy. They saw a species that would rather talk than fight. But they had never seen what humans became when their families were threatened. They had never seen what happened when diplomatic talking failed and humans had no choice but to fight. They thought they knew what humans were capable of because they had studied human history and seen wars fought with rules and mercy. What they did not understand was that humans had spent their entire existence learning to be something other than killers. Every human child was taught that violence was the last choice, that there were always better ways to solve problems. Human society was built on the idea that smart people could find peaceful answers to any question, but underneath all of that civilization, underneath all of those rules and that mercy, humans were still the species that had hunted giant mammoths with pointed sticks. They were still the creatures that had looked at every hostile environment on their planet and decided to make it their home. They were still the beings that had stared at the empty vastness of space and declared that they would conquer it. The aliens had made a mistake that would cost them dearly. They had confused choice with inability. They had mistaken wisdom for weakness. They had assumed that because humans preferred peace, humans were incapable of war. Commander Veltar and his warriors were about to learn the difference between a species that could not fight and a species that chose not to fight. They were about to discover why every predator in human history had eventually learned to fear the sound of human voices in the darkness. The Kethmer thought they were hunting sheep. They were about to find out they had cornered wolves. The Kethmer warfleet gathered at the edge of space near the human mining colony. There were 37 warships in total. The biggest ship was called the Bloodclaw. It was a massive battleship that had never lost a fight. Commander Veltar stood on the control bridge of his ship. His 4 arms were crossed as he looked at the small human colony on his main screen. Pathetic, he said to his second officer, Sub-Commander Crix. Look at their defenses. A few mining platforms, some cargo ships, and what looks like one small patrol ship. The human colony called New Perth was spread across 3 large space rocks. The rocks were connected by enclosed bridges and docking areas. Families lived in pressurized homes where they could breathe normally. Their children played in artificial gravity parks while their parents worked in the mines. It was exactly the kind of soft civilian target that the Kethmer expected from humans. Should we start shooting, Commander? Sub-Commander Crix asked. His claws were already coming out because he was excited about the coming violence. Not yet. First, we give them one last chance to give up. I want to see the fear in their eyes when they realize how hopeless their situation is. The communication came through on the normal diplomatic channels. Jake Martinez appeared on the screen. He was still wearing his plain gray suit and standing in what looked like a simple office instead of a military command room. Commander Veltar, Jake said, with the same calm politeness he had shown in the council meeting. I understand you are here to talk about the mining rights situation. Commander Veltar's laugh was a harsh, ugly sound. Talk? Human, you are looking at the most powerful battle fleet in this part of the galaxy. Your pathetic little colony is about to be turned into space dust. This is not talking. I see, Jake nodded. And what do you want us to do? Get out immediately. Take all human people and equipment. You have 1 hour. Jake seemed to think about this seriously. That is not really enough time, Commander. We have families here, old people, children. Even if we started loading the transport ships right now, we could not get everyone out safely in 1 hour. Then maybe you should have thought about that before trespassing on Kefmer territory. Actually, Jake said, his voice still conversational, I wanted to make you an offer. The bridge crew of the Bloodclaw looked at each other. Several of them made sounds that were like Kefmer laughter. An offer? Commander Veltar could not hide how funny he thought this was. You are facing a fleet that could destroy a dozen worlds, and you want to make a deal? I am offering you one chance. To leave, Commander. Take your fleet and go home. No one has to die today. The laughter on the bridge got louder. Commander Veltar turned on the fleet-wide communication system, so all his ships could hear this entertainment. Did you hear that, warriors? The human is threatening us. He is giving us a chance to leave. The response from the other ships was a lot of aggressive sounds and war cries. Jake waited patiently for the noise to stop. Commander, I need you to understand something. We really do not want to hurt you. Human beings are very good at finding peaceful solutions to problems. We have built our entire civilization around the idea that violence should be the last thing we try. Yes, we know, Commander Veltar waved dismissively. You are weak. You are soft. You make war with mercy and compassion. We have heard it all before. But, Jake continued, we are also very good at changing when we need to. When talking fails, when our families are threatened, when we have no other choice. He paused. And for just a moment, something different showed in his eyes. Something that made Sub-Commander Crix feel uncomfortable. What are you trying to say, human? Jake's face stayed mild, but his voice had a new quality to it. I am saying that you should know what you are starting here, Commander. You are not attacking a military base. You are threatening to kill children, families, people who have never done anything to hurt you. And humans have a very specific response to threats against our children. Commander Veltar's amusement was starting to fade. There was something in the human's voice that he could not quite understand. You are trying to waste time. No, Commander. I am trying to save your life. The words hung in the air for a moment. Several bridge officers stopped their work to stare at the screen. Save my life? Commander Veltar's voice rose to a roar. I am a Kefmer warrior. My claws have torn through the hulls of enemy ships. I have conquered worlds and broken the armies of a dozen species. And you insignificant little mammal, think you can threaten me? Jake nodded calmly. Commander, in our history files we have a saying from one of our old military leaders. The enemy's gate is down. It means that in war, there's no up or down, no rules except staying alive. When you threaten our families, you open that gate. Enough of this nonsense, Commander Veltar snarled. You have 30 minutes to start getting out, or we start shooting. I am sorry to hear that, Jake said quietly. I really hoped we could avoid this. The communication ended, leaving the bridge of the Bloodclaw in quiet. Sub-Commander Crix moved closer to his commander. Sir, should we be worried about human backup ships? Commander Veltar studied the tactical display. There are no human military ships within 3 days' travel. Their nearest fleet is guarding the approaches to Earth itself. No, Crix. The human was simply trying to buy time with meaningless threats. But as they waited for the deadline to pass, none of the Kefmer warriors noticed the small changes beginning to happen throughout the human colony. Mining equipment was being quietly moved to new positions. Cargo containers were being relocated. Families were being moved to the most heavily protected areas of their homes, and in a secured communication room deep inside New Perth, Jake Martinez was speaking quietly into a heavily encrypted transmitter. Control, this is Shepard. The wolves Are at the door. Request permission for Protocol 7. The response came back immediately. Permission granted. God help us all. Jake took off his gray diplomatic suit and put on military clothes. He looked at himself in a mirror and saw a different person looking back. Gone was the mild-mannered diplomat who preferred talking to fighting. In his place stood something that the Kethmer had never encountered before. A human being who had been pushed too far. Outside, the mining colony continued its quiet transformation. What had looked like innocent civilian equipment was revealing its true purpose. Cargo containers unfolded into weapon platforms. Mining lasers turned toward the enemy fleet. The small patrol ship extended weapon arrays that should not have been possible for a vessel of its size. The families were real. The mining operation was real. The children playing in the parks were real. But underneath it all, the humans had been preparing for this moment since the day they had first joined the Galactic Council. They had known that eventually, someone would test them. Someone would look at their peaceful nature and mistake it for weakness. Someone would threaten their children and assume that humans would simply roll over and accept it. The Kethmer were about to learn the most important lesson in human history. The difference between cannot fight and will not fight. The difference between weakness and restraint. The difference between a species that had never known war and a species that had simply chosen to put war aside. Commander Veltar thought he was attacking sheep. He was about to discover that he had cornered the most dangerous predators in the galaxy, predators who had been pretending to be prey. The first shot fired by the Kethmer fleet was meant to scare the humans. It was a powerful energy beam that hit one of the outer mining platforms. The platform exploded in a bright flash of light and flying metal pieces. Commander Veltar wanted to show the humans how hopeless their situation was. He wanted them to see how much stronger Kethmer technology was. Instead, it was the moment that changed everything. On the bridge of the Bloodclaw, Commander Veltar watched the explosion with satisfaction. Now they understand, he told his crew. Send another message to the humans. Tell them they have 15 minutes to start leaving, or we target the main living area. But before the message could be sent, alarms started ringing throughout the Kethmer fleet. Commander, the tactical officer said, his voice tight with confusion. I am reading massive energy signatures from the human colony. Backup ships? No, sir. The energy is coming from the colony itself. On the main screen, the peaceful mining operation was changing. What had looked like simple cargo containers were opening up into weapons platforms. Mining equipment was turning into defensive systems. The innocent-looking patrol ship was extending weapon arrays that should not have been possible for a ship of its size. What is this? Commander Veltar demanded that his answer came in the form of a communication from Jake Martinez. The human's appearance had changed completely. Gone was the mild-mannered diplomat. His gray suit had been replaced by military clothes, and his face was no longer polite and accommodating. Commander Veltar, Jake said, his voice carrying a cold authority that made several Kethmer warriors step back from their stations. You just killed 347 people. Mining engineers, their families, including 41 children. It was a demonstration, Commander Veltar replied, though something in the human's voice was making him nervous. They were warned to leave. A demonstration, Jake repeated in a flat voice. You murdered children to make a point. It is the way of war, human. The strong take what they want from the weak. Jake nodded slowly. You are right, Commander. It is the way of war, but you made one big mistake. What mistake? You thought we were weak. The tactical display erupted in warnings as the human colony showed its true nature. What the Kethmer had seen as a helpless civilian target was actually a military base disguised as a mining operation. The families were real, the mining was real, But underneath it all was something that made the Kefmer computers struggle to understand the data. "Commander," the weapons officer reported, his voice barely steady. "The humans are targeting all of our ships at the same time. Their weapons arrays are—" "Sir, I do not understand how this is possible. They have more firepower than our entire fleet." "Impossible," Commander Veltar snarled. "They are miners and farmers, not warriors." Jake's voice cut through the bridge chatter. "Commander, I need you to understand something about human beings. We are the children of persistence hunters. Our ancestors tracked prey across continents, following wounded animals for days until they fell down from exhaustion. We learned to make tools, to plan, to work together to bring down creatures much larger and stronger than ourselves. The first human weapons fired. They were unlike anything in the Kefmer arsenal. Instead of simple energy beams or flying bullets, they were surgical instruments of destruction. Each shot was precisely calculated to disable rather than destroy, to cripple rather than kill. "We studied your ships, Commander," Jake continued as Kefmer vessels found their weapon systems failing, their engines shutting down, their shields falling. "We studied your tactics, your technology, your psychology. We know exactly how you think, how you fight, how you die." "This is impossible," Commander Veltar repeated, watching his mighty fleet being systematically taken apart by an enemy he had dismissed as harmless. "You are not warriors. You do not have the killer instinct." "You are wrong," Jake said quietly. "We have something much more dangerous than a killer instinct. We have the ability to become killers when we need to be." Sub-Commander Crix was frantically working at his station. "Sir, I cannot get weapons lock on any of their platforms. Every time our systems try to target them, they disappear from sensors, then appear somewhere else." "Stealth technology?" "No, sir. They are not hiding. They are. They are predicting our targeting systems and moving before we can lock on." Jake's explanation came as if he had heard the conversation. "We have been watching you for months, Commander. Every training exercise, every fleet movement, every tactical decision. We know how you think because we made it our business to learn. That is what humans do when we are threatened. We study. We adapt. We prepare." The Bloodclaw shook as its main engine suddenly went offline. Emergency lighting cast red shadows across the bridge as backup systems struggled to work. "The thing about humans," Jake continued, "is that we are very good at pretending to be something we are not. We can be diplomats, scientists, farmers, merchants. But underneath all of that, we are still the species that hunted giant hairy elephants with pointed sticks. We are still the creatures that looked at the vast emptiness of space and decided to make it our home." One by one, the Kefmer ships found themselves dead in space. Their crews were trapped in powerless hulks that had been reduced to life support and basic communications. Not destroyed, not killed, but completely defeated. "You want to know what the killer instinct really is, Commander?" Jake asked. "It is not about enjoying violence. It is about being willing to do whatever is necessary to protect what matters to you, and you just threatened our families." Commander Veltar stared at the tactical display in disbelief. His entire fleet, the pride of the Kefmer military, had been neutralized in less than 20 minutes by what he had assumed was a defenseless target. What are you?" he whispered. Jake's smile was not pleasant. "We are humans, Commander. And you just learned why no one in this galaxy should ever threaten our children." The battle was over before most of the Kefmer warriors understood what had happened. Their mighty warships floated helplessly in space, their weapons silenced, their engines cold. They were alive only because the humans had chosen to let them live, but they were no longer warriors. They were prisoners, dependent on human mercy for their very survival. The proud Kefmer fleet that had conquered 47 star systems had been defeated by a species they had dismissed as weak and soft. Around the galaxy, Automated distress beacons carried the impossible news. The Kethmer had been defeated. Not by another warrior race, not by superior technology, but by humans. By the species that everyone thought was too gentle to survive in the harsh realities of galactic politics. The message would spread quickly. Every species would learn what had happened at New Perth. They would learn that humans were not the harmless farmers and scientists they pretended to be. They would learn that underneath the peaceful exterior lay something far more dangerous than any warrior race. They would learn that the most deadly predator was not the one who loved to kill, but the one who killed only when absolutely necessary. And they would remember to never, ever threaten a human's family again. The rescue ships arrived exactly 47 hours after the battle ended. They came from every corner of the galaxy, drawn by the impossible reports that had been broadcasting across all communication channels. The mighty Kethmer fleet, the terror of 36 star systems, had been defeated by a human mining colony. Admiral Zach Hesh of the Altarian Federation was the first to arrive. His species had been fighting the Kethmer for generations, winning some battles, losing others, but never achieving the kind of complete victory that the humans had just demonstrated. His flagship approached the area with caution, unsure what they would find. The Kethmer fleet was still there, 37 ships hanging motionless in space like defeated giants. They were intact but powerless, their crews alive but trapped, dependent on the humans for basic life support. "This is Admiral Zach Hesh to the human colony New Perth," he broadcast. "We are here to offer help." Jake Martinez responded immediately, his voice carrying the same calm politeness that had characterized him in the Galactic Council. "Thank you, Admiral. We appreciate your concern, but the situation is under control." Under control? Admiral Zach Hesh studied his tactical displays. "You have 37 enemy warships in your local space." Had Jake corrected, "We had 37 enemy warships. Now we have guests." As more alien vessels arrived, the story of what had happened spread throughout the fleet. The humans had not simply defeated the Kethmer, they had done so without killing a single enemy warrior. Every shot had been precisely calculated to disable, not destroy. Every tactic had been designed to neutralize, not annihilate. Commander Veltar, when he was finally allowed to speak to the gathered fleet commanders, was a changed being. The arrogant predator who had threatened human families was gone, replaced by something that looked almost broken. "They knew everything," he told the assembled aliens. "Every weakness in our ships, every flaw in our tactics, every psychological pressure point that would make us react the way they expected. They had studied us like specimens in a laboratory." Captain Chender of the Zephyrian Republic asked a question that was on everyone's mind. How long had they been preparing for this? "Since the first day humans joined the Galactic Council." Jake answered from his position on the communication screen. "We knew eventually someone would test us. Someone would decide that we looked weak enough to be easy prey. So we prepared." "The mining operation was fake?" Admiral Zach Hesh asked. "The mining operation was real. The families were real. The children who died in that first attack were real people with real lives." Jake's voice hardened slightly. "But underneath the civilian operation, we had been building something else. A demonstration. A demonstration of what? Of why you should never, ever threaten human children." The gathered fleet commanders absorbed this information with varying degrees of understanding and fear. They had all seen the tactical recordings by now. They had all witnessed the systematic dismantling of what was considered one of the most powerful military forces in the galaxy. Secretary Throck of the Gorvani spoke up, his 6 eyes blinking nervously. "Friend Martinez, what happens now? You have defeated the Kethmar, but their empire will not simply accept this humiliation." Jake nodded thoughtfully. "You are right, Secretary, which is why we are sending a message." "What kind of message?" "Every ship in this fleet is going to return to their home worlds. They are going to tell everyone what they saw here. They are going to explain that humans are not the weak, soft creatures that everyone assumed we were. Commander Veltar's voice was barely a whisper. And the Kethmer fleet. Your crews will be returned to the nearest Kethmer world in evacuation pods. Your ships will be dismantled and the materials donated to the Altarian Refugee Assistance Program. You are not going to execute us. Jake looked genuinely puzzled by the question. Why would we execute you? You are defeated. The threat is neutralized. What would be the point of killing you now? This seemed to disturb the alien commanders more than if the humans had simply destroyed the Kethmer fleet outright. The concept of showing mercy to a defeated enemy was so foreign to most galactic species that they did not know how to process it. But, Jake continued, we want to make sure that everyone understands the message we are sending. Humans are peaceful by choice, not by weakness. We prefer diplomacy because it is more efficient than warfare, not because we are afraid of fighting. And if you force us to fight, we will win. Admiral Zach Hesh was studying the tactical data from the battle. How is this possible? Your species has only been in space for a few centuries. How did you develop such advanced military technology? We did not develop it, Jake replied. We adapted it. Every piece of equipment you see here is based on technology that already existed in the galaxy. We just used it differently. The weapons are modified mining lasers. The stealth systems are adapted from civilian shipping containers. The tactical computers are repurposed asteroid tracking systems. But the coordination, the precision, is what happens when you threaten someone's family. Every human in this colony, from the youngest teenager to the oldest grandparent, became part of the defense system. Because that is what humans do when people we love are in danger. As the fleet prepared to disperse and carry the news throughout the galaxy, Jake made one final statement that would be remembered and repeated for generations. We do not want to be conquerors. We do not want to rule anyone or take anyone's territory. We just want to live in peace and raise our children in safety. But if you threaten our families, if you force us to become something other than what we choose to be, then you will discover why every predator species in human history learned to fear the sound of human voices in the dark. The message was received and understood throughout the galaxy. Humanity had revealed itself not as prey, but as the most dangerous predator species anyone had ever encountered. Not because they were violent, but because they were capable of becoming violent when necessary, and no one ever made the mistake of underestimating human resolve again. In the years that followed, the Battle of New Perth became legend. Diplomats spoke of it in hushed tones. Military academies studied it as an example of perfect tactical execution. And parents of every species told their children the story of why you should never, ever threaten a human's family. The Galactic Council chambers had changed in the months following the New Perth incident. Where once species had competed for position based on military might or economic power, now there was a new consideration. The human factor. Jake Martinez still sat in the same corner, still wore the same unremarkable gray suits, still spoke with the same calm politeness, but no one dismissed him anymore. When he spoke, the chamber fell silent. When he made suggestions, they were given serious consideration. The Kethmer Empire had formally requested a non-aggression pact with humanity. Their new commander had been very specific about the terms. The Kethmer would never again enter human space without invitation. Other species had taken note. Trade agreements with human colonies became more favorable. Diplomatic disputes involving human interests were resolved more quickly. The humans had demonstrated something that every civilization in the galaxy understood: the capacity for overwhelming force, held in check by choice. But perhaps the most significant change was in how other species viewed the concept of peace. The humans had proven that choosing non-violence from a position of strength was not weakness but wisdom. They had shown that the most dangerous enemy was not the one who loved to fight, but the one who fought only when absolutely necessary. Jake Martinez, the unremarkable human diplomat, had become the most respected negotiator in the galaxy. Not because he threatened violence, but because everyone knew that behind his mild manner and peaceful words stood a species that had looked at the laws of physics and biology and decided they were merely suggestions to be overcome. No one feared him when he smiled and spoke of compromise and mutual benefit, but everyone remembered what happened when the killing started. And that made all the difference in the galaxy.